Hello and welcome everyone to another reaction video. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Benedict Arnold From War Hero to Traitor. It's on a channel called Extra History. I chose this subject because I love military history, especially American military history. And I knew a good deal about Benedict Arnold, but I wanted to learn more. And through the research leading up to this video, I learned a lot about how there's still a lot of debate on his life and what turned him into a traitor. So I'm really glad I did this subject. I kind of stumbled across the channel Extra History not too long ago, and I've seen a few of their videos, and I really liked them. So when I saw this one that came out about a year ago, I believe, I thought it was a great idea to do this video. So hopefully I'm able to add some information to his video, and I'm excited to see what direction he goes in and what points he puts in there as reasons for him turning into a traitor. So without delaying any longer, let's get right into it.
Benedict Arnold has been exposing himself to fire all day, leading the Continental Army in an aggressive attack on British positions. Victory is in sight. But suddenly, a musket ball shatters his leg, then drives deep into his horse's chest. His mount rears in panic and falls directly onto Arnold. Now, in another world, the horse might have rolled over on him, splintering Arnold's ribs and crushing him to death. In that timeline, perhaps he's become one of America's greatest heroes. Towns across the country bear his name. Generations of children graduate from Benedict Arnold Elementary School. Soldiers will train for the World Wars at Camp Arnold. And during the Cold War, a ballistic missile submarine christened for him would patrol the deep. But in our timeline, the horse just crushes his leg, the same one wounded at Quebec. A timeline where Benedict Arnold's name will receive only one commemoration. It's listed in American dictionaries as a synonym for traitor.
I thought about this a lot while doing research for this video, because there were a whole long, circumstantial events that happened that led him to becoming a traitor. It's not just the guy was evil, like sometimes portrayed. It's not that simple. He did a lot of great things for the Continental Army and even just America straight up before the war. He fought in the French and Indian War. I don't think he actually saw battle, but he was in the military at that time at a young age. He was part of the Sons of Liberty, and of course he had a lot of prominent parts in the fighting for the Continentals. He was maybe or arguably the military's most effective general in the field. So he did a lot of great things, and like I said before, a lot of circumstantial things led him to becoming a traitor, and won't get too far ahead of myself. I'm sure they'll get to that in the video.
Real quick before we continue, we are in the final days of our 2025 Extra History Calendar Kickstarter, and your support has been the stuff of legend. But if you haven't yet, please come see what we've been working on and why it was fully funded in just the first 4 hours at the link below. At the time of the Battle of Saratoga, Benedict Arnold was one of the most respected, admired, and famous men in the Continental Army. Compared to Caesar by none other than John Adams, he was often named as only second to Washington in his military ability.
I would mainly agree with that. I'd put Nathaniel Greene up there as well.
In addition to his escapades in Quebec and on Lake Champlain, which you can learn about in our series here, he went on to other successes. He harried a British force that had made a coastal raid on Connecticut, caused a different British force to end a siege by tricking them into thinking reinforcements were inbound, and played a major role in the American victory at Saratoga. So in many ways, Arnold had won the respect and accolades that he'd so wanted, and yet he was miserable. Part of it was physical. The wound from Saratoga refused to heal. Told they might have to amputate, he instead opted for them to reset the leg.
Yeah, he was actually shot in that same left leg twice. The second shot was a lot worse because it actually hit the bone and went right through the bone, and then of course the horse landed on it, which further damaged it. And he was actually told that, you had to get it amputated or you're probably going to die from infection. But he gambled and fought through the infection that did come, and it didn't kill him, obviously. So he did that because he knew he was effective in the field, and that's where he wanted to be. So he wanted to save the chances of that, and if you had one leg, that wasn't going to happen. And little did he know that it wouldn't heal well enough for him to ever really go into battle again. But so it really didn't matter, but he did what he did, and he lived through it.
In a painful operation that left it 2 inches shorter. Unable to stand for more than a few minutes, he spent months rotting on the sidelines at Valley Forge, unable to fight. Still, he begged for a command, perhaps in the Navy, where his expertise as a merchant seaman could be useful and his disability less of a hindrance. All he got from Congress, however, was a restoration of his rank of Major General. It was a promotion he'd received long before, but congressional wrangling had held up its ratification. And instead of seeing it as a reward, Arnold interpreted it as pity. In fact, Arnold, who was likely traumatized from heavy combat, was depressed and increasingly disillusioned. His quarrel...
In my research, I found out that he was really passed up 5 times for a promotion that he really kind of deserved. And he was given to his subordinates in many cases. And this is because George Washington wasn't in charge of giving out promotions and things like that. It was the Continental Congress, which was really a bad system because they're not out there in the field. They don't see these guys and really know what happened other than reading reports and newspapers and things like that. So George Washington should have been in charge of that. And I think if he was, he would have been promoted earlier. But I guess the video isn't really going to touch on his older life, his earlier life, excuse me. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about, because these things led to his characteristics that I think really led to him becoming a traitor. He grew up, his early life, he was wealthy. His dad was a successful businessman, and then several of his siblings passed away, and that kind of drove his dad mad into drinking and lost the family business. So then at that point, whereas Benedict Arnold was going to go to college and, live the lavish life, he was forced to work. And of course, he was able to gain some wealth himself. He was he opened a business. What was it? Apothecary business in New Haven, Connecticut, and he actually became rather wealthy on his own, leading up to the war. And then the taxes levied on the colonies really made him upset, and it affected his business. So he chose to combat it by becoming kind of a smuggler and doing things under the nose of the British rule. This led him to become a part of the Sons of Liberty, and this really set him on the path to becoming a patriot.
And aggressive streak, a quality that had made him a great soldier, had also damaged his career. Arnold rubbed people the wrong way and frequently made comrades into enemies. In addition to his conflicts with Ethan Allen during the actions on Lake Champlain, see episode 1 of our Invasion of Canada series for that, he also feuded with another officer named John Brown on the Quebec expedition, accusing Brown of pillaging British officers' baggage and mismanaging occupied Montreal. As a result, Brown had hit back in a newspaper with his own financial accusations, sparking a bitter feud.
John Brown was probably his prominent enemy throughout most of his life. He, slandered his name, and he had rightfully did so. I mean, Benedict Arnold was money hungry, and Brown said that money is this man's god, and he really wasn't wrong. Benedict Arnold, his whole life, he was chasing success and money and status. So he was kind of willing to step on any toes he needed to get to that point.
During the Saratoga campaign, when Army Commander General Horatio Gates took credit for a strategy Arnold devised, Arnold got into a shouting match with Gates in front of his staff, leading him to be removed from command and forbidden to take further part in the battle. Arnold fought anyway, leading the spectacular attack that both won the battle and destroyed his leg. Now, it's important to understand that all of this scrambling for promotions, for credit, for reputation and status, this was a huge feature of the Continental Army. Anytime an officer leveled an accusation at another, it would become a question of honor. Therefore, every time Arnold got in a feud, either he or his opponent often demanded a congressional inquiry or court-martial to vindicate them and restore their reputation.
This type of thing kind of is what makes me laugh about people say modern politics is getting like chippy and people disrespect each other, and that they want to get back to the old ways when politicians respected each other. And I think we did go through a period where they were more respectful, but from the beginning, people just openly bashed each other, and that was part of politics, and that was part of the military, even before America became America officially. So this reminds me of when John Adams and Thomas Jefferson hated each other so much during the early elections that they would, even write books and take out huge newspaper articles slandering each other's name.
Congress was, frankly, getting sick of it, which was partly why it hadn't favored Arnold over much. They were trying to form a country during wartime, and glory-hounding officers like Arnold were becoming an irritant. Meanwhile, Arnold was becoming sick of Congress. Later, Arnold would claim that he always had been a moderate revolutionary who wanted America to remain in the British Empire once its grievances were addressed. The Declaration of Independence happened while he was in the field, and supposedly he had not agreed with it. Likewise, he became even more unsettled when the victory at Saratoga brought France into the war on the side of the United States. As a Connecticut Protestant, Arnold detested Catholic France and considered it a blatant hypocrisy for the new republic to betray its ideals by siding with an absolutist monarchy. He was also increasingly angry at the ineffectual and contradictory nature of Congress, which seemed to want to control everything, yet accomplished little. Congress had also, on multiple occasions, quibbled with Arnold's bookkeeping while on campaign. Now,
Yeah, that quibble with the bookkeeping, that is a really famous one because Arnold always claimed that the Congress owed him a lot of money for his salary and lifestyle and things like that. But once Congress really balanced the books and looked at the spending, especially when he was in Philadelphia living really lavishly, they showed that they didn't owe him a salary, that he actually owed them money because he spent way too much of Congress's money. And that's definitely true. And I'm sure they'll talk about that because that's a huge reason that he kind of becomes a traitor is money. He wanted that lavish lifestyle, and he's willing to do whatever it took to obtain that.
it should be noted that some historians don't really buy these later ideological claims and think they were after-the-fact justifications for his actions. You be the...
Yeah, that's the kind of debate thing I was talking about in the opening. I didn't want to say it because I agree with some of those, but those are kind of, like you said, after the fact type thoughts that some of them Benedict Arnold did claim, but people also view that as him trying to, after the fact, justify his actions. And you can't look too deeply into these things. I think it really is more simple than a lot of people make it. A lot of things might have a small play in it, but really, as you'll see, I think a lot of it is money. It has to do with his lifestyle.
Judge. Either way, though, that didn't stop him from signing an oath of allegiance in May of 1778, swearing that the United States was independent and he would defend it against King George III. And the next month, Arnold finally received his reward, a post as military governor of Philadelphia, recently vacated by the British. This was an inexplicably bad decision on Washington's part. Arnold had zero political sense, was highly impatient, and frequently initiated or exacerbated quarrels. He was the worst possible person to drop into the volatile politics of post-occupation Philadelphia. One of America's richest cities, and also its most politically radical, Philadelphia was the capital of the Revolution for a reason. The civil authorities there were the most extreme fringe of independence-minded patriots and were loath to accept military authority over their city. That patriot faction was also locked in a bitter feud with the city's loyalist families, who, during the British occupation, had been hospitable to the occupying soldiers, keeping an active social scene of balls, theatrical entertainment, and masks on the menu. Among the most flagrant was the 18-year-old Peggy Shippen, the beautiful daughter of a loyalist family who had briefly courted British officer Major John Andre. Please remember...
Yeah, that whole romance and the love triangle that's really showed in one of my favorite shows called Turn. It's about colonial spies during the Revolution. It's a really good show. It's not really historically accurate, but I think it kind of shows pretty well that whole love triangle between John Andre, Peggy Shippens, and Benedict Arnold. And that definitely had a huge play in him becoming a traitor. And like I said before also, they couldn't have picked probably a worse person to put in charge of Philadelphia at this time. That it was just a horrible play by Washington, and he's the one who did get him promoted to that position. And the guy couldn't even keep peace in his own personal life and in the immediate vicinity of his military life. So putting him in probably the most important city to try to keep together and making him in charge of that is horrible. It's a horrible decision.
Remember those names for later. Then Arnold came into Philadelphia like a bull in a nuclear reactor. Not only did he live an extravagant lifestyle there, with a carriage and footman acting much like the British governor before him, he kept up the rollicking social scene that the Patriots so hated. He also started to dabble in corruption, perhaps already beginning to rebel against the rebellion. Most of it was small stuff, not uncommon among American officers, like ferrying private goods in public wagons. But he did also engage in profiteering and intervened in a maritime dispute between privateers, offering to help one side in exchange for a cut of the prize money. Acts that the civil authorities secretly documented. But what got him in the most hot water was how much time he spent with the city's loyalist families, particularly the Shippen family, because he was besotted with Peggy Shippen, flooding her with overtures of love and marriage proposals for 9 months. Regardless, by 1779, things were finally looking up for Arnold. Not only was he seriously pursuing an engagement after 4 years as a widower, but the state of New York had offered him a huge fiefdom of private land in recognition of his heroics and as an incentive for him to settle there. Yeah,
like I said earlier, a lot of these things were circumstantial that happened that really led to this. Number one, he wanted to be out in the field. He wanted to be a military leader where he was good. If he hadn't gotten injured to the point where he couldn't do that anymore, I think you could arguably say that he never would have betrayed America. He would have never done what he did. Him being forced to go to Philadelphia and live this role kind of exposed him to the loyalists and the Shippens. Her happening to be there, Peggy Shippens, and him falling in love with her like that did 100% lead him astray towards the Continental cause. He became more loyalist thinking because he was surrounded by loyalists. Also, him being there and being in that quarrel with Congress and not getting the pay that he wanted, which was unrealistic, let's be honest. They were trying to fund a war and not give him just money to live a lavish lifestyle. It was selfish. But he was in a lavish area. Philadelphia, like I said, was the richest city in the whole colonies. So he wanted to kind of impress the Shippens and live that lifestyle that they had. And if Congress wasn't going to give him the money to do so, he was going to do illegal things to get that money. So that led him down a dark path in that way, towards greed and more money and things like that. And he racked up a lot of debt, which forced him to do more and more sketchy things. And that led him down the path of, having to find other ways to make money, more money, and that led him to becoming a traitor.
When he left the city to go see the property, that's when the civil authorities pounced, accusing him of corruption and publishing their evidence in the newspaper. The controversy not only caused New York to withdraw their offer, it also put Arnold's tentative engagement to Peggy in jeopardy. More annoyingly still, the Philadelphia authorities had joined with his old enemy, John Brown, who again filed charges against him that Congress had already investigated and dismissed years before. Arnold begged Washington for a court-martial to exonerate him, but the trial kept being delayed due to the military situation. This left Arnold in mental turmoil, the only relief coming in April of 1779 when he and Peggy finally wed. Yet barely a month later, a despondent Arnold was once again begging Washington to clear his name. Arnold had given everything: his health, his leg, his neglected business in Connecticut. His first wife had died with him absent, for God's sake. "Having sacrificed every form of blood and fortune and become a cripple in the service of my country," he wrote, "I have little expected to meet the ungrateful returns to which I have received from my countrymen. But as Congress have stamped ingratitude as the current coin, I must take it." Washington did not reply promptly, and within days, Arnold was looking at another option. For if Congress did not appreciate him, perhaps he could turn to someone who could. Like, say, Peggy's old flame, Major.
I looked into why this court-martial was delayed, because this was a big reason that, that this is during the turning point where he really becomes a traitor. So it's an important turning point. And what I found was that the court-martial, it was never denied. It was just delayed for reasons that a lot of court-martials were delayed during the war. They just didn't have the officers to come and take part in the court-martial. These officers that had to do that were out fighting the war. They couldn't just drop of the hat come just to clear someone's name. It's really kind of a pointless thing. He's not even a in the field military officer at this time. He's just looking over a city. So it's important, but it wasn't like they needed him anymore, really. And that obviously, I feel like he knew that, and that obviously really hurt his feelings.
John Andre, to whom she was still in contact, and who now served on the staff of British General Sir Henry Clinton as his chief of espionage. Ho, 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 you know what that means. Spy love triangle next week, baby. Mark that on your calendar. Wait, you have a calendar, right? No? Well, actually, we can help you out with that. Because our History Happens Every Day 2025 calendar Kickstarter not
I'll go ahead and stop right there because I think the rest of it's probably ad. But like I said, this is part one, and I'll be putting out part two hopefully next week. That's my goal, to really stay consistent and put at least one of these out every week. My goal is Friday. With other things in my life, it becomes hard to do it every week, every Friday. But that's my goal from here on out. But like I said, a lot of things that led to this point, this is where it's getting juicy, where he actually is turning and becoming British spy really at this point. But a lot of things were circumstantial. It led to unfortunate events, and I think you take those unfortunate events and mix it with his poor characteristics of greed, and he really didn't seem like the kindest guy. He didn't have a lot of friends. You take those things and mash it all together, and it leads to this unfortunate events where he becomes a traitor. I think, like they said in the beginning of the video, had he, stayed in the field and been a military officer for the rest of the war, I think we would have schools and cities and everything named after him. But it didn't turn out that way. But thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for part two next week.